Okay, and we're back live here. I'm Renato Beninatto, and I'm here with Jonathan Otis, our expert on mergers and acquisitions here at NIMSI. And we're here to have a quick conversation about the big news of the day, the merger or acquisition of SDL by RWS, creating the new number one company in the industry. So, Jonathan, what was your reaction when you read the news? Of course, we're here 8 hours behind London, and this was announced in the afternoon there in London, so the people had some time to digest and think of it, and we've been looking at this for the last 3 hours or so. Mm-hmm. So what was your first reaction when you read the news?
A little surprised initially, but when I thought about it for a few minutes, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you've got a services juggernaut in RWS. They've got lots of great customers. Customers are pushing them forward to process data in new ways, to translate in new ways. They do a lot of other business services other than translation as well. And then you've got SDL, who's a technology maven. I mean, tons and tons of IP there. Lots of stuff going on. They've got older products. They've got new products coming on, but they're all about technology. So the fact that you've got, someone really forward on the customer side with somebody really forward on the technology side, it's pretty interesting to see them go together.
Yeah, I find it interesting because when you read the official announcement, one of the things that they expect is to generate at least 15 million pounds in synergies just in the first year. I guess that just by optimizing their management teams and streamlining their operations and combining some of their activities, they're going to achieve that quite easily. I find it interesting because SDL was moving with into this model of more in-house translations, trying to minimize the or take more advantage of their overhead. And RWS has a traditional outsourcing model. I wonder how which one is going to win in this one. And also an interesting thing is that RWS was traditionally an old school company in terms because they focused on intellectual property, very, very complex patents. And they were very proud not to use technology in the past. It was basically not so many years ago. They announced a few years back that they were incorporating translation memory and SDL technology in their workflows. But what I always found interesting about RWS is that they had this very, very highly skilled translators with double PhDs, and they would dictate the translations that would be typed by another person and then go through a thorough review process. And what made RWS so successful in their original development was the fact that price was not an issue for them. They were charging £1 per word for German translations because they were dealing with high valuation, high value patents. And just rambling a little bit here, today in the news, or yesterday in the news, there was the story about a European company that was not able to defend its patent here in the United States because of an Italian translation.
Right. The courts wouldn't take a certified translation, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And, to protect it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think the savings numbers. All companies are going to save money by going together. There's synergies and other things that can happen. The 15 million pound number to me didn't seem really high. That's certainly not enough to justify putting these guys together. I mean, they see a lot more than that going forward. And I agree. I think RWS has great customers and great customer relationships, and those customers are dragging them to new technologies. And you need to own them. I mean, you can't outsource all this stuff. You need to own it to have lowest cost. Cost is a big factor, and I'm sure that's part of this.
Well, I find it interesting. And by the way, if you're listening to us live, feel free to post your questions here on it is pulverized. We have so many players that it's almost silly to talk about monopoly when you're just having a reshuffle of some of these who is doing the job. And the reality is that the market is so diverse and so expensive that expensive in the sense of it expands, it gets bigger, not expensive, costs a lot of money. It's expensive with an A. The market is so expensive that there is still room for a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So we are probably going to see the first billion-dollar company in this space in an industry that is around $50 billion. So a billion would be, where's my math there? Is it 0.2% of or 2%? 2% of the market. That's very, very, very far from concentration, monopoly. When you talk about monopoly, you're talking at somebody owning more or way more than 50% of the market. Right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think no one should be afraid this is going to steal market from them. This is going to steal customers or anything like that. In fact, I think it knowing that SDL, a lot of SDL's business was actually selling software to other LSPs. This is going to actually open up that market widely, I think, because LSPs aren't going to want to use software from a competitor. So all the startups and others that have been innovating in this industry, they should be happy to see this on, because it's going to change SDL. And if anybody was competing with SDL on the technology side, this is going to open up the ability to compete even more. And for these guys, I think it's all about the end customer as well. So I find this industry interesting in that technically every language could be a different LSP for a customer. That isn't really true, but that's where the opportunity is. So people should see this, as good for the industry. Industry needs change. I agree with you. There's no monopolies. This is too big of an industry for that. It's too diverse. But this kind of stuff is good for it, and it's good for the people having it. It's good for people not in it.
Well, so a couple of things come to mind, Jonathan. One is the fact that if as many translators have this fear that machine translation is going to kill the industry, the fact that outside investors, big money, is behind this integration is further proof that the business of translation, as we often say here at NIMSI, is impervious to crisis. It's growing no matter what. Both companies, RWS and SDL, had banner quarters until even after COVID, and it has been the same with the top players in the industry. and we've been monitoring this all along while many sources were describing a doomsday scenario. It's the end of the world as we know it. We were actually seeing from very early on that people need to communicate. It doesn't happen that overnight people forget their languages and then don't need translation anymore. Communication, especially in a moment of crisis, tends to expand and tends to grow. So the fact that we have the financial industry looking at this space, putting money in the industry is a very good sign. And I also believe that there's going to be more happening. Today, the other announcement that was naturally dwarfed by this one is that Keyword Studio, another London traded company, acquired $3.6 million marketing agency. Looks like a small deal, but Keyword Studio has bought maybe 20 companies in the last few years. They are in constant acquisition, in constant development. So I believe that we need to watch out for news coming.
Pandemic period that this year, and especially this fall, is going to be very busy in the M&A world. This could definitely be a precursor to a lot of deals, both big and small. People need to buy technology, they need to buy revenue, they need to find people. Consolidation is normal in a mature industry, and so I totally agree with that. And we think it's going to be super busy this fall.
Well, in your job as our M&A expert, we've sold 4 companies in the last year, and 2 of them to RWS. So we know how diligent and how professional they are in this process of identifying and selecting good candidates. So
I know the M&A people at these companies, and they're both sticklers for perfect integrations.
yes.
And so it'll be interesting to watch them and see how they integrate their companies together, because I know they're both just crazy about making sure that integrations go smoothly and completely. And so it'll be fun watching them integrate these companies and the changes that come within them.
And by the way, this doesn't affect. It's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take time. This is just an announcement of an intention. This has to go to court. There needs to be an agreement. It needs to be approved and goes to the stock market, and the exchange of the shares is going to happen. It's not. What we're talking about here is not something that is of immediate consequence. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of work going on.
TransferRx's been pretty active on doing smaller acquisitions, building.
What happens? What is the dynamic, right? So you have a dynamic for those that are suppliers to the top companies, but you also have a dynamic of the medium-sized players. That whole, the under $50 million company is getting bigger, right? Between I don't know, 20 and 50. There aren't many companies in that space. So this is an opportunity for the smaller players to fill this void. There is, in my experience following the rankings and the market, what I see is that there seems to be a certain funnel, right, in terms of revenue at the top, or it's a funnel and a pyramid. A funnel when you look at the revenue, a pyramid when you look at the number of companies, right? You have a lot of companies, right? You have a lot of companies that have fewer companies at 50, fewer companies at 50. You have less at 500, and now one at the top, right? So it's a pyramid in terms of organization. But our industry is looking more like I don't know, a guitar shape, and this
big. It's small, big. It's a little bit.
Yes. So this middle needs to be filled, and there is an opportunity for consolidation coming from the top. And I wouldn't be surprised. We know that there are some companies that are making this effort to do roll-ups and acquisitions. You can look at a company like Samalingue in Poland that is rolling up several companies. They bought companies in Canada. They bought a company in Sweden. They are doing a little bit of this, taking advantage of shareholder money to do that.
We see activity at all different levels of size. So we see lots of $5 million companies buying smaller ones, lots of $10 and $20 million companies buying $3, $4, and $5 million companies. And we see the $50 and $100 million ones trying to pick up ones as well. So there's that constant movement going up. I think COVID put a small damper on it a little bit while people kind of settle down and see who are going to be the survivors and who are going through it really well. Plus, nobody wants to sell their company in a down market because they don't think they'll get as much money as they would in a normal market. But I think we're about to come out from that, and people that show that they've survived really well through the pandemic and maintain the majority of their revenue, they're going to be very valuable to others who are acquiring. And those that have capital, have cash, or have ways of getting capital that can be used for acquisition, I mean, they're going to use it. And so I think it's going to be very active. And you're right, we're constantly feeding up. There's been a gap in the 10 to 20, $30 million range of numbers of companies. You could say, well, the top is shrinking a little bit, so there's less people buying the big companies. But what is also true is that you've got PE firms with tons of money. I mean, there's lots of money that's been saved during the pandemic. There's more of the money than ever coming into the PE firms, and they're the ones that really keep the middle moving. They want a little bit larger transactions. They want a little bit larger companies than the smaller ones, but they're the ones who are financing the industry in the middle, and they of course want to make things big enough so that the RWSs and the line bridges and those people acquire. So it's constant. There's constant motion, and it's good for companies of all size. So anyone who's thinking about, M&A should, be in touch with brokers like ourselves and make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of the market and understand when the right opportunity comes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just reading the official announcement from RWS as we're speaking, and this is
grabbing the customers and being able to maintain them for absolutely as long as possible. So selling each other's products to existing customers, combining those customers into one major, sales force is exactly what I think this deal is mostly about. And so that's pretty powerful, group of customers, and they're coming from both sides, which makes it even more interesting. So it's, you can always say it's a marriage made in heaven, but, people, when they peel the onion back and they look at it, which I'm sure both of these companies have done, they can see the real benefits, which makes it worth the value that they've put on it.
The other thing that occurs to me, Jonathan, is this the brand, right? SDL, I remember when SDL was formed back in, I think it was late 90s, and Mark Lancaster was the founder. He came from Lotus. He was a localization manager and created this SDL, Software Development and Localization, was the original name of the company. And over time, they acquired some historical players like ITP, for those who remember. They bought Trados. And it's quite interesting how some years disappeared, right? So Baum and Berlitz and SDL, Moravia, and we're going to, the challenge is to find what are the brands that are going to be around in a few years. I remember the first time I did a ranking of translation companies, I remember creating an infographic before they were called infographic graveyard tombstones of companies that had disappeared in the previous few years. Companies like Alpnet, several companies over the past several years have been integrated and acquired, and we just move on. It's an industry where the brand really is not that big. It's not that important. And what matters is the kind of service that you're providing to your client base.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when you get to be over $1 billion, their own brand is going to become their own name recognition. Their own name recognition is going to become important, not just because of customers they're selling to, but also from the investment, community. They want their stock to be an everyday stock, You've got to have a certain brand recognition for that. Number of shareholders and others really watching the stock and playing with it. They're going to be spending some money, make whatever brand the brand they want people to know. They want RWS, but RWS has many different brands underneath it. They've let flourish individually. And so it'll be interesting to see. How long that maintains. How long that really try to pump up the umbrella name RWS on top or not. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yes, and I wonder where. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the announcement, who's staying and who's going, it's an RWS acquisition. They're taking over all the management. I think that the only person is staying. The management team is the CTO, of SDL, and this is SDL's biggest combination of the two companies. One of the things that I wonder is how this is going to affect the idea of technology buyers. So one of the things that we have seen in the market over recent years is that SDL had too many technologies, too many brands. RWS is not is the most technology driven. Interest from translation buyers to review their technology stack. And we have been doing audits and working with companies in selecting their technology structure. And what we see usually is that they're looking for independent technology providers. They're not necessarily looking at a combination. They don't want to buy the technology and be married to that. And this is something that has traditionally affected companies like Transperfect and SDL. The fact that thing for companies like MCM, Source, MemoQ, and other players in the technology Atlas, who provide their independent software companies that provide technology. Also, this might be a good opportunity for companies to buy so that they can compete with SDL in terms of their offering. So this would be a dynamic to monitor over time.
Absolutely agree with that. I mean, that's why I think these kinds of acquisitions are good for the market. People don't want to be married to something. People don't want to marry to something, and they don't want to separately as well. So I'm sure a lot of SDL RWS customers they'll get their hands on some of their software for free or within a service. Other ones want to be able to buy best of breed. That's the other thing is that best of breed products are always coming up for new and more efficient ways to process. And this industry is going through a lot of change there. Mature globalization team that's been working on stuff for the last 5 or 10 years, 5 or 10 years. New products and want new products all the time to streamline their operations and make them faster. So I think that's great for the industry. Technology startups. There's lots of opportunities. People should building new products, coming up with new ideas. Because that's what keeps everybody moving. So we're being asked what is the impact on translators? If I am a translator working for any of these companies, I don't think there's going to be any change. Business as usual, keep going, merry-go-round. I just think that it's just it could look chaotic. Some people might look at it as bad for the industry, but I think it's just a normal part of change that people have to go through. And and knowing your customers really well, is important. And I'm sure these guys know their customers really well, which has got to be what's driving this at the high end.
So one other point that I'm just trying to gather here is that one of the complaints of this industry is that we get no respect, we get no visibility, nobody cares about translation. Hey, guess what? Go to the Financial Times, go to Bloomberg, go to any major financial publication today, and everybody will be talking about translation and localization, and that's the time for you to capture that glow and newsjack the story and try to ride this wave of everybody talking about one of these growth industry. Remember, we are in an industry that has never seen a crisis. We're in an industry that is in constant growth, and it's going to continue growing. And machine translation, if you're afraid about machine translation, that's a question that I get all the time. Don't. Machine translation plays its role, but it's not a replacement for what we do. And some people are going to say, yeah, if you asked a draftsman a few years ago if their job was going to be replaced by AutoCAD, they would say, no. It was. You don't do drawings on paper anymore.
Now ask the draftsman if he wants to do it without AutoCAD.
Exactly.
You can't be a global company without translating. You can't, it's part of everyday life. And people might like it, they might not like it, they might not think of it first, but they can't live without it. And, that's what's great about this industry.
Excellent. Let me see here if we have any more questions, and otherwise I think we have pretty good hold of what is in this space. It's an interesting time. And we're going to be getting more news as things go. But I'm pretty excited. I'm happy for RWS. I'm happy for SDL, and I'm happy for our industry as a whole because it's a great opportunity. And if you want to be in that position, and if you want to hear more news about the space, follow the multilingual stream with news that we'll be following. And subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the magazine. Multilingual is moving into more of a daily news website than just a bi-monthly magazine. They will coexist. And here with us at Lindsay, we're here to have the conversations that you need to have about M&A with you, Jonathan, and about you if you are looking at changing, and if you have any questions about what is the best infrastructure for your technology stack, if you're moving away from, and by the way, I wonder what is going to happen with the old technologies that were being sort of phased out as SDL. If you're looking at something else in the market, we have our comparison tools on the Lindsay website. And we can help you choose your next CMS structure moving forward. Jonathan, anything else to add?
Nope. And if you want to talk about M&A, just give us a call.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think that this was breaking news. First breaking news live stream from us here, and keep the comments coming, keep the conversation going. We're here to help.
Be safe.